Hey there, it's Zoe and welcome to the show. My question for you this week is, do we really need digital transformation or is iteration a better approach? Let's get into it. On Planet Human today, great and interesting news from Neuralink, one of Elon Musk's companies. They have done the second brain-computer interface transplant into a live patient, all going well. Woohoo! And if you've been listening to this show and read any of my novels, you know that I'm fascinated by this brain-computer interface technology. I've been following it for some 15 years. And the fact that we have it in real humans and it's really working is very cool. And yet this casts up a whole bunch of issues for us as we think as futurists into the future. And what does this mean for our leadership? David Matten wrote a fabulous article about this. I'll post a link in the show notes for you so you can go read the full thing. And he talks about the coming divide, the technology divide between amplified humans and non-amplified humans or organic humans. We are moving into this post-human or transhumanist phase of human development, so that when we can, all of us or many of us can choose to have a brain-computer interface implanted into our brains, we will merge with AI and become something beyond human. I, of course, am very excited for this future, notwithstanding all the risks, but it does pose a number of ethical questions for us. And I'll get to that a little bit later when we talk about how might we and what if in the next segment coming up soon. On Planet Zoe, I have been digging into book writing. So I am well into developing the work for Power Games and its associated secondary book. So there'll be a main nonfiction text on Power Games and how to collaborate better without losing your brain and your soul and whatever. That is not the tagline. I'll get a better tagline by the time it's produced. And its accompanying book, which is a choose your own path kind of book. So I want to publish these two together. It'll be coming out in the new year. I'll do a Kickstarter for the first time to launch this whole product. And it's fascinating. The research into how people operate in teams badly and well together is something that is an ever-present challenge for all of us. So I've been working on Power Games, and I've also been working on Olympus Rising, which is book 3 in the Gaia series, hopefully to have that out by the end of the year, just in time for Christmas. So that's everything on Planet Zoe. So as I was thinking about these brain-computer interfaces and asking, what if this technology was happening right now and how might we contend with it? Some of the things I came up with were all about ethics. It's going to be some ethical challenges around this technology. I mentioned a couple of them in the intro when we were looking at Planet Human. The haves and haves not. There'll be the amplified humans and then there'll be the organic humans, and two different species, if you like, will emerge. What does this mean? It means that those of us who become amplified will have certain advantages in workplaces, for promotions, they'll be more efficient. And what does that mean for organic humans, for people who choose not to have the implants? What are their rights in comparison to their amplified colleagues? So that's an ethical challenge. Along all of that are the massive risks associated with that from a privacy point of view, for a control and autonomy point of view, who actually has control of the software, who monitors it, who will legislate around its applications or its delivery. What if a criminal has an amplified AI implanted in their brain and uses that for illegal purposes? Who's at fault then? Is it the person who executes the action? What about complicity with the manufacturer of the BCI? What about then who's responsible and accountable? These are kind of some of the ethical challenges. What else? I think the idea of autonomy is going to be an interesting one with amplified humans. Who's really in charge? And I explore some of that in my novels with Xanthi, who does get a brain-computer interface. Who's really in control of the actions? Is it her? Is it the machine? Or is it the two of them together? I think these are some of the challenges that we face coming up. And in a certain degree, this is the same conversation we're having right now with generative AI. Who's actually producing the work? Who's the author of the work or the action when we're looking at generative AI in art, in whether it's visual art or written art or video or music? These kinds of questions are not yet resolved. So taking a meta look at this, I think the implications for us right here, right now, are understanding how we go about making ethical choices. And I think this is not well looked at in most leadership training development programs or in leadership in general. We just kind of assume that our values will take charge and will help us filter to make the right choice. But sometimes our values are in conflict with one another when we're looking at our choices. And this means this is an ethical dilemma. How do we resolve these? How do we look at the consequences near and far? So I think a really good ethical decision-making framework is essential for leaders moving forward. More on that in some of my articles online. You can check out on LinkedIn, or if you're signed up to my newsletter, you get the full, long, lengthy examination of what this means for you. Or you can come along to the Leadership Conclave, which is another thing that's happening on Planet Zoe. And on November 8th, we're gathering in the city, not in the city, we're actually outside of the city in Kapacumlong, to get together, talk about planning for 2025. And one of the core trends we need to look at is ethics in leadership. Okay, so come along to that and really think about how you are bringing your ethical frameworks to the decisions you make now for what's coming next. Well, it's that time again. It's tea time in the office kitchen. And my guest today, well, he's a bit of a superstar, actually. We had such a profound conversation. His name is Christian, otherwise known as Boo Boucousis. Boucousis. I did have to practice that quite a lot, and I still got it wrong. So Boo, he is the CEO of a large management consulting practice called Afterburner, named for a cohort of fighter pilots of which he belongs. He's an ex-fighter pilot, 16 years as a fighter pilot before he up and changed his career trajectory. And he talks a little bit about that in the interview. So he is a former fighter pilot turned property developer, turned publisher, turned author, and now a leadership trainer and management consultant. And he is awesome. I do hope you enjoy our conversation. Here's Boo. Awesome. Well, all the way from Miami, originally from Australia. Welcome to the show, Christian Boo Boucousis.
Hey, there you go, Zoe. We did rehearse that a few times before the show.
Nailed it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yes, I'm glad we could get this teed up. And you have such a fascinating background as a fighter pilot. And the theme for the show is all about transformation, reinvention. So tell me a little bit about your own personal reinvention journey.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, is it reinvention or evolution? I always find the nuance in language interesting. It is change from one state to another, but often we put time parameters around it. And I think for me, yeah, my perspective is it's always constant change. So you may as well make the change work for you rather than fight it. And for me, in my life, probably, there's those moments in time that you cannot control and it asks something of you. And I would have been a fighter pilot forever, I think, if I could have been. But I unfortunately was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, which is a form of inflammatory autoimmune disease along the lines of Crohn's disease. Crohn's is in women, ankylosing spondylitis is in men. And for me, it just meant that flying a fighter jet was too difficult. And also the challenge with that particular condition is it's more painful to be still than to be moving. So being an airline pilot and being stuck in a cockpit was also off the cards. I had to do something that was active, and all I really could think of outside the Air Force was to be in business. But I didn't really want to be in corporate career stream type of business. I was more excited by entrepreneurialism or maybe more founding a business, not really an entrepreneur per se. That word has been hijacked by people that I guess don't really know anything about business. So, did I transform? Did I change? I just did what I had to do, and that was I had a small kid and had to put food on the table. I wanted to start a business. I knew that in Australia, it's a pretty competitive market. I didn't really know anything about business, so I probably wasn't going to have a lot of success there, which led me to get on an airplane and move to Afghanistan and set up a company in Kabul with a good friend of mine. And this was 2005. So
Right.
at that time, there was a lot going on in terms of post-war reconstruction. And I'm a very pragmatic person, and I think being a fighter pilot is very good at that. You become very good at critical thinking, design thinking, and you're always finding the pathway to least resistance. So for me, it felt, and I read a book as well about starting your first business, which probably reinforced my decision. And that was, you have to go somewhere where supply can never meet demand. I guess in today's world, that's that blue ocean, red ocean philosophy. And, in Afghanistan, post-conflict, there was a lot of work that needed to be done.
Yeah.
Still is a lot of work to be done 20 years later. And my best friend at the time, Tom Nordia, and I just went for it. And we won a nice big contract when we started. We didn't really know what we were doing. When we sold the business after 3.5 years, we still didn't really know what we were doing.
So your clients are delighted to hear that now.
Yeah, but, I think as a leader, one of the most powerful things you can say is, I don't understand. I don't know what I'm doing. Not in terms of, I don't know what I'm doing and therefore I'm going to do nothing, but I don't know what I'm doing. I think I need to learn. I need to take this opportunity to learn some more. I need to develop myself some more. And at no point did we ever enter into a contract where we didn't know what we were doing. Everything we did, we were laser sharp and absolutely focused granularly on the outcomes that the client wanted. But the good thing about not knowing what you're doing, and the good thing about not having a clearly defined product, was you tend to be far more curious about the other party, around the customer, where you can't really say to them, hey, I'm Tom, this is Boo, and we do this. You would say, hey, how you doing, Zoe? What do you do? And you would have a conversation that was all about them, because we avoided having to talk about ourselves and what we did, because we didn't really know. But what we found was, through those conversations, we figured out what we needed to do. And what we needed to do was help people and not do what we thought needed to be done. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of business owners make this mistake. They think their big idea or what they do is what's important, but what's important is how what they do is applied in the context of the need of the customer. So we were very good at having that conversation. And as a result, we just did all sorts of things. But fundamentally, if you were to say, what did we do? We found really good people to do really difficult jobs, and we backed them for the clients. So if the client didn't like them, we would replace them within 2 weeks. But because we didn't want to do that too often, because it was going to be very expensive, we invested a lot of time and effort to make sure we got the right person up front.
Yeah.
And that business just grew and grew and grew too quickly. The downside of having a business that clocks over $200 million quickly is it's difficult to cash flow. It's difficult to manage. There's very few systems, and we sold out to a multinational just because it was a victim of its own success. But I thought I like being in business. I like doing new and interesting things. Then I moved into kind of a high level security around airports. Moved to Papua New Guinea. Through that, ended up coming across a form of construction technology called volumetric prefabricated modular construction, which is just Lego, big blocks of Lego.
Love it.
And started a company where we built a building using that methodology in Perth, in Australia, in the Central Business District, and set a record for building a 17-story building. In 11 weeks, we got the structure up with the build-up, Hickory, our partner, but never built a hotel before either. So that was an interesting journey as the development manager and the CEO of that business. And then moved into publishing, came across this company called Afterburner. Afterburner is, I watched a fighter pilot on stage talking to IAG, and a big insurer in Australia, talking about how fighter pilots think and fighter pilots work. And I watched this insurance company, and everyone was just hanging off every word. And I was listening to it, and I had a bit of a moment where I was like, I'd been out of aviation for almost 12 years at that point in time. Hadn't done anything in aviation. And I that brought my two worlds together with clarity around, I do think like that, and I do approach things differently like a fighter pilot, and I am highly reflective about my life and everything that I do. I have this intentional feedback loop that we call debriefing, and as the universe does, I said to that guy Phil, I'm like, hey mate, I'll help you build the company. I just finished this hotel. I've got to wait 3 years for it to mature into an asset. Do you want some help? And he said, actually, I want to go be a fighter pilot again. Do you want to take over the company? And I'm like, oh, not really. I was a bit tired of running companies at that stage. I just wanted a break. But I came to America. I met the founder, James Murphy. I watched this incredible event with 4,000 people and 30 fighter pilots doing this amazing experience. That turned out to be the CEO of VMware and then the CEO of Intel Chips, who still works with our team. And, I just saw it and I went, what we're saying isn't really groundbreaking. It's not particularly clever, but how we say it is truly unique. And how we put the pieces together is absolutely unique. And I call it thought loops, iterative cognitive models. And, I bought a license for Australia. I came back. Through that journey, I also ended up buying a publishing business that was print publishing, converted it to a digital publishing business. And then a few years ago, the founder of Afterburner, I had a phone call with him one night. He sounded a little bit tired. And as a joke, I said, I'll buy the whole company off him. And he agreed, and I put in an offer. I now live in Miami as the CEO and co-owner of Afterburner, which is the fighter pilot brand globally.
Yeah.
We've worked, it's a company that's worked with 3,500 companies, over 2 million people, just sharing this whole, it didn't used to be called fighter pilot mindset. It was something called flawless execution, but we've moved the brand and the awareness into mindset now, because that is what's truly unique. And a fighter pilot mindset is an entrepreneurial founder's mindset. It's the same thing. It's a constructed growth mindset model where even if you're not growth mindset, if you just do it, follow the steps, you become a growth mindset human being. And to tie in with leadership, and not knowing and being honest enough with yourself to say, I don't know what I'm doing. Through iteration, you'll eventually learn. And that's what's really cool about it. And to have the opportunity to have this platform to share my personal story, but also the deep well of experience we have as a company is just a phenomenal way. I turned 50 this year. I dreamed of being a fighter pilot when I'm 5. I've been doing fighter pilot stuff for 45 years now. And it's pretty damn cool.
Yeah. I think that's probably one of the success factors going into Afterburner and the concept of fighter pilot mindset is because everybody goes, so cool. I do anyway.
It's just different, right? I mean, it's a little bit like Top Gun in terms of some of it, but
absolutely.
Really, fighter pilots are all a bunch of nerds. They love science. They love numbers. You've got to be very analytical. It's not really, and there's a lot of scope for intuition as well. Don't get me wrong. But it is it's not that maverick cowboy kind of environment.
Can we just dive into this a little bit, because I think this is an important thing to clarify for people around this fighter pilot mindset and what that actually means. So, like you said, there's room for intuition, and yet my understanding of what it means to be a fighter pilot, it's kind of two wings. Okay, we'll go with wings.
Generally, we do. That is very true, Zoe.
It's a good start.
Yeah,
harder with one. Yeah. One wing is this very methodical, procedure-driven aspect to flying a plane. Like, you can't just riff on that necessarily. There's some things specifically that you need to do, and then there's the in the moment, reactive, intuitive part. Now, have I got that correct? That's the first question.
Yeah, and it's a mistake people make where they think to be creative and to be flexible, you need no boundaries, you need freedom. And it's actually completely incorrect. Your brain cannot have freedom without structure. It's designed to help you survive. So the less structure you have around it, the more worried it is about surviving and the more anxiety it brings to the party. But when you have structure and then you get yourself into a position where you have to think laterally, you're coming from a platform of stability. You're not just a constant rolling mess of uncertainty, which is why, we're turning into a global organization of introverts, where everyone just sits at home, puts on their camera because they're afraid of everything.
Oh, it's so true. Yeah, there's getting people out of their rooms and into a co-located space is a massive challenge these days.
It is, and it's easily the largest contributor to organizations just being really, really average.
Why do you think that is?
If you can't collaborate, humans aren't designed to do things together apart. We're just not designed. Could you imagine, 50,000 years ago, the Incas trying to run the business and everyone had their own tree and they were yelling to each other and never coming together, not having that synergistic oxytocin reaction for conquering difficult tasks together, for picking up all of those really important body language cues so you can really understand, is that person comprehending what I'm saying, or are they just nodding their head? Like this, humans are designed from an energy perspective to be together. And the reason businesses are so crap now, and they are crap, most businesses are crap, most customer service facing entities are garbage, is just because we've lost that ability. We just lost, and if you're not around people, you don't care about them. I ran a remote business, right? 2005. We did a lot on the phone. It was Skype back then, right? Skype just came out. And every time you weren't together, things gradually in your contract tend to spiral away, and people would naturally gravitate towards other contractors, your competitors. But the minute you sat down and had a face-to-face coffee, shook hands, talked it out, resolved. You can't run a relationship as a husband and wife or partners, whatever dynamic you have, if you're not physically available. Like, it's just inhuman. And we create this alternate universe of business where we believe the rules to humanity don't apply. And there's one thing you learn as a fighter pilot with all that technology operating in a remote environment. There's only one pilot in the seat of the airplane. The other one's 3 miles away. Is you got to collaborate really well in the same room to be able to operate autonomously by yourself.
I agree with that. And so collaboration, I believe, is the future of leadership. It's the core essential of where we need to go. And
it's
more so
intentional collaboration, though. It's deliberate collaboration, not collaboration for the sake of it. Like that is passing the peace stick, the peace pipe. There needs to be the more intentional you are in your collaboration, the more intentional you are in your execution. And that's, we at Afterburner have the luxury of working with companies when they come together, and the energy of the room, the excitement, the positivity that comes from having an event with 2,000 people in the room is, to every person in that room, whether you're introverted, extroverted, whether you feel like you haven't been part of the team or displaced in that community, instantly all gone. Just vibing off humanity. And the thing about being a fighter pilot, we call it the human factor, right? In that when things go wrong, most of the time it's the human, not the machine, not the technology, not the process, not the system, not the procedure. It's the human, their comprehension of the situation, their investment in learning. And we built a system that builds optimum humans working as small teams.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So what are the secret ingredients for your magic system?
So first is iterative thinking. So basically, linear thinking is how most of us operate in the world, right? We get a job and we move to the next rank, the next rank, the next rank. We maybe get an executive role, maybe a board, and then we retire, right? We go to school, we get a certain grade. That grade gets us in university. We get a certain grade in university. We get a graduate job. We want to have a partner, we want kids. I get in my car, I drive to the supermarket. I drive to the supermarket every day and I get caught at the same roundabout intersection lights every day. And at no point do I ever ask myself, is there another way to get to the shops? Is this the fastest way, or is it the way I think is the fastest way? Is this way a good way at this time of day, or is it better if I go? It's like, like rat races, right? Where you have a whole bunch of heavy traffic and rat races that are really, really busy, but get to the last traffic light at the same time as the person that just crawled through the traffic. So the thing that's missing, and the first structure, the first foundation of fighter pilot mindset is intentionality. It's outcome driven. You have to, we call them targets, right? Like whenever we do anything on a mission, we always have a target. There is always a destination. And because of that, we can measure everything backwards. So mindset is start with the end in mind. And I, when Carol Dweck's book Mindset came out, 15 years ago or whatever it was, the first iteration of it, my dad read it and he was talking me through the book. And as it was going through it, I'm like, why is this book insightful? This is like common sense. Like there's nothing in this that's clever. But what I realized at the time, I was probably a bit big for my boots, but B is that my perspective was different because I was trained in that growth mindset. And so when I read about this thing called growth mindset, it's like, that just sounds like a bunch of fighter pilots talking about, Michael Jordan, talking about all these successful people and, how rewarding effort rather than score. And all of that is, taking emotion out, thinking, being pragmatic. All of that is foundational, fighter pilot mindset. But I think Carol misses something. And that's a deliberate iteration. So if you start with the end in mind, so let's say we set the mind to the future.
Yep.
The thing we have to do is discover how set our mind is in our ways. So set the future, set in your ways. And generally those two are in conflict with each other, right? You want to be an athlete. I'm not fit. I'm not strong enough. You want a particular partner or love of your life. You have that unrequited love because you feel like you're not good enough. So there's a lot of these self-defeating behaviors, the self-talk. The same thing we spoke about earlier. It's easier just to sit in your room and watch YouTube all day. That's safe. Nothing's going to happen. That's fixed mindset. But the only way you can change a belief system is to iterate it. So little tiny steps every day. The concept, people just throw so much garbage out there, right? And I don't blame anyone for it. It's just buzzwords. But, people talk about having to live outside your comfort zone, right? Go live outside your comfort zone. Yeah. You don't grow if you're in an emotive state of fear. So outside your comfort zone is fear. If, however, you expand your existing comfort zone at a speed that you're comfortable with, but you always expand it every single day, you will have an enormous comfort zone. And when you start as a fighter pilot and the first kind of flight that you do, you put on this big helmet that barely fits right, and you got an oxygen mask, which is all twisted on my big Greek nose, and you're hot and sweaty, and you've got a big life preserver on, and you get in that airplane, you're just sitting there going, how does this actually work? I mean, I can barely remember tying my shoelaces, right? You don't just jump in a fighter jet and become a mission commander on day one. It's about 400 missions, or incrementally more challenging. And then along the way, if you're doing really well and you haven't had a fright, the instructors will deliberately push you outside the comfort zone. And you know why they're doing that? Not to let you go and show how amazing you are outside your comfort zone. We call that NAFOD, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But for you to be smart enough to say, I'm outside my comfort zone, I'm outside my depth, I'm going to stop. I'm going to fly straight and level. I'm going to sit on my hands, and we call it knock it off, stop, and say, I'm not comfortable with that. And that's the big tick for the flight. Yeah. So many pilots take the NAFOD approach, and NAFOD stands for no apparent fear of death. And that's the challenge when, and it's the same in leadership when you have these leaders that make these captain calls, when they go outside the bounds of the business, or they try and introduce some incredibly innovative model, they've got no apparent fear of the death of the business. They're high risk, and again, you can take risks that are perceived as high if for you they're highly mitigated through training, awareness, capital, whatever, as it's mitigated. But we constantly see these cowboy leaders that get to a certain level of a business because they work hard, and then to start to make some really dumb decisions. The decisions that, as they were coming through the ranks, they're like, if only they did this, if only we did that, if we just took the shackles off, and then they just create chaos. And
what do you, Boo, let me jump in there. I want to understand that a little bit more. You've seen, so that's really interesting observation. They get to a certain level and then they start being reckless. What is that about? Is it ego? Is it drunk on power? Is it, you say it's NAFOD? What contributes to that? Because I think that's a really important thing to diagnose and to inoculate against.
So let's put the sociopaths to one side. Okay. So they're there, all right. And the narcissist and borderline personality disorder. So if we take them out, and a great deal of the dysfunction in a business is because of those folks. I think because businesses generally aren't highly engaging organizations where the freedom and the delegation of decision making isn't as good as it could be. It's like you've toiled 20 years to get there, and it's freedom. I think it's like moving from a low security prison. It's not that bad. It's been okay. I've been fed well, but now I'm free. I'm going to live life. Everything I've been denied, I'm going to soak up. I'm going to use the company expense account. I'm going to go out and try and find a whole bunch of new vendors, even though the current one's doing a great job. I'm going to bring this new product that's going to blow everyone's socks off. And this is what TV and the movies do as well, right? So you're always sitting there, and it looks like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak came up with this great idea, but they didn't. They iterated a small idea until it made enough sense to be a business. Dyson just came out with this amazing vacuum. Zoom is this amazing platform that everyone uses for video. No, they all started with very clever people who iterated a simple idea, and it worked really well. And people said, this is easy, this works, I want one. Whereas business that are larger businesses that have multi-billion-dollar market caps, where they can allocate $100 million to some fanciful idea, and particularly technology, right? So particularly some amazing new piece of technology that's going to transform the business. If only we automated this, if only we had a better platform, we'd be so much better. But new technology doesn't fix dysfunctional behaviors. So what happens? Spend millions of dollars implementing a new platform, and then the data migration turns out to be a little bit harder than, we're on-prem now, we've got to go to cloud. No one thought of that before. And usually, and what the other really interesting thing I've seen is, you've got leaders in these big, I'm talking ASX 200, FTSE 100, S&P 500, big companies that they bring in experts, right? Like the Accentures and the experts of the world, who generally are experts, who tell them all this before they start. But the pressure of being seen to change, and the military has a lot of this too. We call it the wheel turning. Every 10 years, you go back to the system that was there 10 years ago. That to get promoted to the next level, you just have to change something. So I think there's this really human need to be seen to be doing something. And the higher you go up the leadership chain, the more damage you do if you don't stop and think before you act. And that's, again, where iterative thinking is really useful, is it introduces a time to think and just stop. So if we look at our model, and our model's just the fighter pilot one codified, but it basically means plan, brief, execute, debrief. So which just means prepare together, collaborate intentionally, and gather around agreed outcomes, and no more than 3. All right. And when we walk out the door, That's the end of the conversation. No tangents, no personal agendas. We all agree that for this particular initiative, these are the it might change later. That's okay. And it might change because it has to, not because we want it to. It's going to change because what the world throws at it. We're not going to just change it internally, which happens a lot, right? So planning is deliberate planning. So deliberately together in person in a room. And I'm doing a project at the moment, which is a $4 trillion forecasting piece of technology for the largest bank on earth. All right, doing this stuff. Then we brief. Okay, we don't have a meeting. There's no such thing as a meeting. There's only briefs. Short, sharp, contextualized conversations, which connect the plan to today's reality. Right. And a core part of our briefing methodology is it's inquiry-based communication. Meetings are always like, what have you done? What are you doing? It's directive or filling in information gaps. Whereas briefing is, here's the plan. Here's what we're going to do. Are there any questions? Does everyone understand? If not, raise your hand. We'll clarify them all now. So and this is what you do in the morning, right? So once you set yourself up in an execution rhythm, you plan your 2 weeks together. You execute every day and you brief every morning. In Agile, they call it a stand-up, but you just sit there and go, here's what we're doing today. There's nothing's come from nowhere, or we haven't had some horrible news externally, like everyone got to work, there's no rain on the road. So it just contextualizes the future to today. Then execution is the rest of the day. No meetings, no need to find missing information because we planned it, we spoke about it this morning, and no distractions from leaders. I was reading a stat from Atlassian where 56 times a day a leader interrupts their team. 56 times a day seeking clarification.
I love it. No, I don't.
If that's happening, the immediate solution to that is plan. If people don't know what to do, or they're not doing the right thing, or you don't understand what's going on, you are not planning. You are not planning effectively. And we have a 6-step process for that that works no matter what you're planning. But really, the power of it is the debriefing. And the debrief is where we say, hey, team, what did we set out to do today? We set out to make 100 calls. Cool. What actually happened? We made 90. Cool. So we're 10 short, right? There's an execution gap of 10. Yep. Everyone. Yep. All agree. Why is that? Why did we not get there today? So get curious, right? And this is self-diagnosis where, everyone may have had to have done 25 each, team of 4. I did 26, I did 25, I did 13, I did 38. Whoa, 13, what happened there? Well, I couldn't get my login credentials, my call platform Orem, I just could not upload my lists. I ended up just doing it on my phone because I wanted to get some calls done. So automatically in that debrief, the leader goes from a mindset of, well, look at this underperforming person that I have in the business here. Only 13 calls compared to Zoe there that did 36. And that would be it in a debrief for most companies. They'd walk out and the perception would be bad sales, good sales. Now we dig into the debrief. We're like, cool, all right. And it's self-diagnosis. So this happened, I did this. This happened, I did this. This happened, and this is how. Cool. So what's the action? What can we do in the next 24 hours? Well, I spoke to IT. They blew me off. I need your help as a leader to unblock that for me. Can you do that? Yeah, I'll do that. In fact, I'll do it right now. Text, boom, done. Head of IT fixed, right? What often happens more though is the apathy and plaque that generally builds up in an organization. It's like, let's say production. We work with, we work and help the manufacturers of Ozempic, the Viagra of the current world in terms of medicine, weight loss medicine, right? Diabetes. And they just can't get enough of it out the door. Just can't do it. So we came in and we helped introduce debriefing because every system, every facility, every team suffers from complacency, apathy, and pluck, just build up of routine, right? Debrief brings it all alive. Can we tweak that system? Can we update that procedure? Can we update that small piece of the production line rather than the whole system itself? Because the actions are always minute. So debriefing takes the big long-term goals, the objectives, and distills it down in a 24-hour action. And what happens there is you look at a facility that has, 1,250 people in it, and they're debriefing every single day, and you're finding 1,250 tweaks a day, amplified over 365 days because it never shuts down.
That's a lot of iterative improvement.
Before.
Yeah.
They never did that before. I mean, I didn't do math very well at school, but that becomes profound. And that's how we see don't get me wrong, people use Afterburner for a show. We come up there, we dance around, we do our fighter pilot thing, and never to be seen ever again. But companies like VMware, Intel, Google, they go deep with us, and we work with them for a long time. And it always comes down to the leader. The reason why organizations don't want people like us around to help them is because the leaders are afraid that we're going to make them look bad. The leaders that work with us are the leaders that exhibit that first characteristic I said. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's going on here. I need some help. And the less shareholder driven, the less target orientated an organization is, the more willing they are to have us around. It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
So for us, credible, humble, approachable they're the three leadership traits that are taught at the US Air Force Academy as a leader. And we think if you have those traits as a leader, we have a saying, and I learned this saying when I was a very young fighter pilot, and I was a bit of a cowboy and made a few errors of judgment. And my leader said to me, and this was a leader I was profoundly respectful of, a phenomenal fighter pilot, a phenomenal leader of men and women, became the chief of the Air Force, just an incredible human, right? And he said, "Boo, you're a good person, and you're a good pilot, but that's not the perception some people have of you. So let me tell you this little piece of advice. Credibility takes years for you to earn, and about 2 to 3 seconds to lose. So think about that." And after that, that just changed my judgment ever since then, because it's like I invested all this time to be the best version of myself. Do I really want to fly a bit lower than I need to for a thrill? Do I need to put the afterburners on here and make a bit of noise for the thrill? Is that going to be the 3 seconds that burns my last year of being? And you feel the esteem of those around you increasing when you are that best version of yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that to me is one of the most profound lessons, I think. And I say it all the time to everyone that makes a dumb decision. That's my go-to phrase, right?
That's awesome. So, Boo, tell me about On Time, On Target, your orange book there that's popped up on our screen. That's your book.
Orange, it's the emergency book. It's for when things aren't going well, you're feeling stressed and anxious, you pull it off the shelves. Look, it's a good book, but it's a bit old. I have a new book coming out in time for Christmas. It's called The Afterburner Effect. And this is pre-COVID, pre-technology. We were already acknowledging AI then, but now we're far more into mastery of technology. And we use the storytelling of 5th generation fighter pilots, which is the current generation, where you're seeing humans and machines far more fused, augmented reality, machine learning. And when you bring that world into a world that is high speed, high paced world, where you're consuming vast quantums of information, too mutually exclusive. To move fast, you need the minimum amount of information possible. To process vast amounts of information, you need a lot of time. So the fighter pilot is constantly up against those two opposing forces. So I think with this cognitive model, we're able to increase the probability of an organization being fast and being much better with their information, more contextualized, more insight and outcome driven rather than data driven. Like being a data driven organization just means we love being distracted by a whole bunch of numbers and drive chaos throughout the organization. Whereas a outcome focused organization that creates situational awareness is and knows how to tame the data or data over here, to tame it and to contextualize it and understand that a lot of it just, as a fighter pilot, we would call it noise. Like there's a lot of noise.
Yeah.
Information that adds no value, doesn't provide knowledge, doesn't provide wisdom, is noise. You don't even give it the time, don't even call it information. But you know, in organizations now, there's so much data and so many touch points. Leaders run the risk, we call it performance flying. If a fighter pilot doesn't have a destination and they just fly off the instruments, they crash the airplane. Happens all the time. You're completely reactive to the measurements. And, you know, that's what's happening in business. In the US now, you're seeing these once dominant low-cost carrier airlines that were running 20 to 30% margin, running at a -5%, -4%. And you know why? The key reason why is operational ineffectiveness. Too long to turn the jets around. The airports providing a service that's not up to speed. The decision to fire all the air traffic controllers and furlough them during COVID and giving them great retirement plans. Now there's no air traffic controllers. So this, you know, these knee-jerk decisions that were made at the time have these long-lasting effects. And our methodology just tames that volatility a little bit. It just creates pause for thought. Yeah, is this pandemic going to be something that's here for 10 years? Everyone knows it. Everyone knows everything bounces back. Like it's old as time itself. But because most leaders are reactive, they're not insightful, or what we call predictive thinkers. We end up with this constant reactive leadership model, which is just driving people all over the place. They're keeping them online at work from 6 a.m. to 11 o'clock at night, checking their phone. Look, what's happened now? What am I going to miss out? Because there's just, you're not getting ahead of the jet. You're not getting ahead of your business. You're not thinking where your business is going to be in 2 days. You're thinking about where it is now.
Love it. Thank you so much. Now, Boo, are you ready for the Fast 3?
Yes. Fast, anything fast.
That would a dumb question for a fighter pilot. Okay, here we go. What is the future tech you most want right now?
AI, everything. I think it's, I think, you know, as you learn more about AI, and again, I don't know anything about it, but there's a couple of people around us that are really good at it. I think, you know, I use AI for everything. I use AI for my workout this morning. I just type in my parameters into AI and it gives me my workout for the day. I don't need these workout apps anymore. I give it my last weight and reps and it tells me what my weight and reps should be today. You know, I don't do anything without AI, a post online, but that's still like, you know, clumsy Fisher Price AI, you know.
Yeah.
So I think not a ChatGPT open source AI, contextualized AI around your company and around your market is what's going to be critical to have the speed. It's so much faster when you use AI, to the speed at which you need to be to make good decisions.
I love that. And I'll riff on that a little bit. It's not only contextualized to you and your company and your experience, but integrated so that you can have things link up and have one thing execute into another to speed it up. Okay.
Yeah, but look, AI is just technology, right? It's like this phone. Most people don't know how to use their iPhone. Most people got no idea of all the cool stuff it can do to help you in life, right? They don't know how to configure it. They don't know the right app. They just pick up the phone, and Apple's smart enough to make it work and do pretty pictures and watch TikTok. But you have to master technology, and AI is no different. It's an innate object that requires direction and leadership. So you need to have the collective consciousness of planning to drive the AI to build the models and to build the solutions and services to serve your customers. If you don't, you're not going to exist. They're just going to use AI instead of you.
I think it comes back to the point you made earlier, is that you need to get ahead of the jet to be asking the questions about what we can do with this.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 2, best tip you ever got for leadership.
I have to go back to it. Credibility, years to earn, seconds to lose.
Okay, love it. And what are you reading or listening to right now?
I am reading Your Brand Story, which is a phenomenal book. Um, it's all about how to tell a story and how, which I've always found really hard, is to articulate in a way that's easily consumable what problem you solve for the client rather than what you do. And what's really interesting is, for a lot of us, our products and services solve a lot of problems for a lot of different clients.
Yeah.
So how do you say that in 5 or 6 words? So that to me, that's been a really fascinating journey for me. And also, as someone who's pretty analytical and data and factual and pragmatic, understanding, like we have an automatic story. You get on stage, you're in a flight suit, there's the story. But now to move into, well, how do I actually tell a better story? How do I shape the perceptions of this room? Is something that I'm really fascinated. And that, again, for me, one of the challenges about data led and for leaders using data to tell a story, it doesn't tell you a story. It shows you the footprints to where you got to today.
Beautiful. That's fantastic. And that was the Fast 3.
I probably should have done it faster though. Sorry.
Oh no, why? I jumped in there and expanded. So, I call it the Fast 3, but it's kind of like, here's 3 questions that we will rabbit on about. That's really what it should be called. Okay. Last question. Is there a question I haven't asked yet that you would love to answer?
No, I think, well, maybe one thing, I think, because I know my kids kind of have issues with this, and people come up to me at events and ask me this question. I mean, I've lived a very purposeful life. I wanted to be a fighter pilot from the age of 5, so that everything I did was just to fulfill that goal. There are people in their 50s that have never had that. People in their 40s that have never had that. There's kids going through school but learning more at their iPad at night, having that same challenge. And I think, to me, is the more you try and find purpose, the further it gets away from you, because it's not a thought, it's a essence. And when there was times I didn't think I could be a fighter pilot. There were times I flirted with being a graphic design, an architect or something. Couldn't draw, so put that one up to bed. But there is an essence inside all of us for something. It doesn't matter what the technology is doing. It doesn't matter. If you look at horses, if you're in the horse business, you either went out of business or you changed to be in the transport business. All right. So, American Express is a credit card, but what was it when it started? It was a carriage service. It carried people backwards and forwards in carriages. So I think your purpose isn't to sell horses. Your purpose is to get people and goods from A to B, and a little bit that way as a person as well. Your purpose isn't what you do, it's where you get to, if that makes sense. And it took me 16 years to become a fighter pilot. So you can't think of purpose the same way you think of, I'm going to swim more laps in the pool tomorrow if I keep training. It's deep, it's essential, and it's a gravity. So don't sweat it. Just feel it and allow yourself to that gravity to pull you where you need to be.
Lovely. Thank you so much. This has been awesome. We went to places I didn't expect. We have some great quotables, some great insight, and I love your energy. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Zoe. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Very grateful.
On Read to Lead this week, I have 3 books to explore around this idea of innovation, strategy, and execution. The first one is on strategy, and that's by Marty Strong. It's called Be Visionary, and it's a fabulous practical book that looks at the core essence of leadership, starting from self-mastery and values through to visualizing the future with using techniques such as storyboarding. Marty's an excellent writer. He's also an excellent podcast guest. He's been on the show twice, and he's an ex-Navy SEAL, and he has done an extensive amount of work to produce this book. And I think it's a really valuable strategic visioning book, textbook, useful book for you. That's the first book. Second book is The Innovator's Mindset by Charlene Lee. She's got another book coming out shortly on generative AI, which I can't wait to get my hands on. This book I thought was fantastic because it looks at the mindset required to be innovative. So how do we come up with new ideas? What's our relationship to risk? And this book does a great job of showcasing all of that. Very practical, very useful, and you can pick what is your relationship and profile to innovation. And the third book is On Time and On Target by James Murphy and Boo Boucousis. And this is all about execution of strategy. How can we get straight to the chase, get on time, get on target, deliver the results that we're after? It's about clearing away the clutter in our discussions and our meetings and get really super focused. So those are the three books: Be Visionary, Innovator's Mindset, and On Time and On Target. Well, that's the show for this week. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would love to hear from you. Please email me, zoe@zoerouth.com, or hit me up on the socials. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and X and Threads. And I would love to hear from you. If you're out and about when you're listening to this, do take a photo and send that through. That's kind of fun too. It makes this more of a conversation. If you do appreciate the show, and it is a massive labor of love, believe me, then please rate and review and make a comment on the show. It really does help boost it in the rankings to get the message out there to more people, more leaders doing the big thinking that you're doing around what's next when we can work on it now. What do we work on now for what's next in the future of leadership? So in the meantime, live with grace, lead in service, live well, lead well.